The real reason the United States picked one over the other. And here's the part that makes aviation fanboys angry. The F-15 was faster, more powerful, and more dominant in the air. The Eagle was built to own the sky. But the Navy looked at that monster and basically said, not for my carrier. Because in real military power, the best jet on paper is not always the jet that wins a mission. The F-15 won the sky. The F-18 won the deck. And once you understand why, you understand how military decisions really work. In the 1970s, the United States had a major problem. The Air Force wanted a pure air superiority fighter, a jet designed to find enemy aircraft, attack first, and dominate the airspace. That became the F-15 Eagle. But the Navy had a different problem. The Navy did not just need a fighter. It needed a jet that could launch from a carrier, land on a moving deck, survive brutal saltwater conditions, fit into tight carrier space, fight enemy aircraft, hit ground targets, and come back ready to fly again. That is where the F-18 enters the story. And what people get wrong is this. The Navy did not choose the F-18 because the F-15 was bad. The Navy chose the F-18 because the F-15 was built for a different war. And the real reason is not emotional. It is not fanboy nonsense. It is mission, money, logistics, and the brutal reality of operating from the ocean. Let's be fair to the F-15. The Eagle was not a failed aircraft. It was a predator. It was built for one clear mission, air superiority. Speed, climb rate, radar, missiles, maneuverability, power, everything about the F-15 was designed around one idea. See the enemy, reach the enemy, kill the enemy. And for the Air Force, that made perfect sense. The Air Force operates from land bases, long runways, big maintenance infrastructure, more room, more flexibility, more space to support a specialized fighter. So when the Air Force asked for a dominant air-to-air machine, the F-15 was the answer. But here is where the internet debate becomes stupid. People compare the F-15 and F-18 like they're racing on an empty runway. That is not the real fight. The real question is not which jet looks better on a performance chart. The real question is which jet can actually do the mission from the platform that owns the mission. And for the Navy, that platform was not a runway. It was an aircraft carrier, a moving steel island in the middle of the ocean. And that changes everything. So answer this in the comments. If the F-15 was better in the air, should the Navy have forced it on the carriers anyway? A carrier landing is not a normal landing. It is a controlled crash. The aircraft comes in fast, it's a tiny deck, catches a wire, gets slammed to a stop, folds into a crowded space, gets exposed to salt water, launches again, lands again, and does it over and over. That is a completely different world from landing on a long runway. So when someone says, why didn't the Navy just use the F-15? They are skipping the most important part. You cannot just paint Navy on the side of an aircraft and call it carrier fighter. To navalize a jet, you need stronger landing gear. You need a serious arresting hook. You need structure that can take repeated carrier landings. You need corrosion protection. You need folding wings, or at least a way to manage deck space. You need slower, safer approach behavior. You need the aircraft to survive the carrier environment. And all of that adds weight. And weight kills performance. That is the dirty secret. The more you modify the F-15 for carrier operations, the more you start taking away the exact advantages that made the F-15 special in the first place. So yes, a naval F-15 sounds amazing. But once you start adding everything the Navy actually needs, you're no longer talking about the same Eagle. You're talking about a heavier, more complicated, more expensive aircraft trying to do a job it was not originally built to do. The ocean does not care about your brochure. The carrier deck does not care about your speed record. Would you rather have the flashiest fighter or the fighter that can survive the deck every single day? Now we get to the Hornet's real advantage. The F-18 was not trying to be the F-15. It was trying to be useful. That is why the name matters. F/18, fighter, attack, not just air-to-air, not just air-to-ground. Both. The Hornet could defend the fleet, escort strike aircraft, attack ground targets, support troops, and still fight enemy aircraft if needed. For the Navy, that is extremely valuable. Because a carrier has limited space. Every aircraft on that deck must justify its existence. You do not have unlimited room. You do not have unlimited maintenance crews. You do not have unlimited spare parts. You do not have unlimited time. So the question becomes, how many missions can this aircraft cover? And that is where the F-18 made sense. It may not have been the king of pure air superiority like the F-15, but it gave the Navy flexibility. And in carrier aviation, flexibility is power. The F-15 was a sword. The F-18 was a toolbox with teeth. And sometimes in war, the toolbox wins because it is there for every job, not just a perfect one. Be honest in the comments. Would you choose a specialist that dominates one mission or the workhorse that can cover 5? Here is the twist most people forget. The aircraft that eventually became the F-18 came from the YF-17, a lightweight fighter design that lost to the YF-16 in the Air Force competition. So in one sense, the Hornet's ancestor lost. But the Navy saw something different. The Air Force chose the F-16. The Navy looked at the YF-17 design and saw potential for a carrier-based fighter attack aircraft. That is the part people miss. Losing one competition does not mean the design was useless. It means it was not the right answer for that specific customer. The Air Force wanted one thing. The Navy needed another. And that is why the F-18 story is so interesting. It is not the story of the best aircraft winning in some universal ranking. It is a story of the aircraft that best matched the mission. That is how military procurement really works when it is done correctly. Not which jet has the biggest numbers, but which jet solves the actual problem. And for the Navy, the actual problem was not just enemy fighters. It was carrier operations, strike missions, fleet defense, maintenance, deck space, and survivability at sea. That is why the F-18 made sense. The YF-17 lost one battle, but through the Hornet, it won a much bigger one. Is that one of the greatest comeback stories in fighter aviation? Put your answer in the comments. So here's the real reason America picked one over the other. The United States did not choose the F-18 because it was more dominant than the F-15 in a pure air-to-air fantasy fight. It chose the F-18 because the Navy did not need a fantasy fighter. The Navy needed a deployable weapon system, a jet that could live on a carrier, a jet that could launch from the sea, land on the sea, fight from the sea, and survive the abuse of doing that every day. The F-15 was designed to dominate from land bases. The F-18 was designed to operate from the carrier environment and perform multiple missions. That is the key difference. And this is where the debate gets serious. Wars are not won by the aircraft with the coolest poster. Wars are won by systems at work. Maintenance crews win wars. Logistics wins wars. Deck crews win wars. Aircraft availability wins wars. The ability to launch, recover, repair, reload, and launch again wins wars. The F-15 was legendary. No serious person denies that. It became one of the most successful air superiority fighters ever built. But that does not automatically make it the right Navy fighter. Because the Navy was not buying a land-based air dominance machine. It was buying a carrier air wing solution. And the Hornet gave the Navy something the F-15 could not give as naturally. A balanced, carrier-suitable, multi-role fighter that could do the dirty work day after day. So the next time someone says the F-15 was better, ask them one question. Better at what? Better on a chart? Better in a clean dogfight? Better in a video game? Or better for the actual mission the Navy needed? Because the F-15 won the air superiority argument, but the F-18 won the carrier argument. And for the Navy, that was the only argument that mattered. The F-15 was a more dominant air superiority fighter. The F-18 was the better answer for the Navy's carrier-based, multi-mission reality. The real reason America picked one over the other is simple. Mission beats ego. Now I want your verdict. If you were sitting in the Pentagon, what would you choose? A navalized F-15 or the F-18 Hornet? Write it in the comments and defend your answer. And in the next video, F-14 Tomcat versus Super Hornet. Did the Navy kill a legend too early, or did it finally make the smart move?